This meeting is being recorded.
Man, that thing is so different now. I got a new computer and it's like way more high pitched and not a robot. So, what's
Oh,
going on, Laura?
oh, sorry. Hi.
How's it going? How's it going?
Good.
How you doing?
Good.
Yeah. This is episode 61, and we are going. Laura is jumping on. Thank you for hopping on here, Laura.
Yeah, of course.
If you guys don't know, Laura is our macro coach with the company. So she works with athletes or any individual that's has a specific goal in mind that needs kind of some help with their nutrition or help with their macros to get them to that goal. So what all you been up to lately?
Gosh, I just waiting for the weather to get better here in Minnesota. It's finally my favorite season, fall. So the leaves are changing, lots of hiking coming up in the future. So yeah, other than that, not much.
Yeah. And better better for you is like worse for like 90% of America.
If you lived in Minnesota, I mean, you used to live in Minnesota, so you probably know this, but us Minnesotans live for the fall season, like the sweaters and pumpkin spice lattes and the changing leaves.
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, so I guess today we're going to get into, so kind of like a caveat on that, like with the change of the season in Minnesota, we're kind of entering into a change of the season for CrossFit here, and it's getting into like qualifier season. So we're going to, I guess, kind of break down macro cycling for you guys, kind of how you should be eating differently throughout the year, and what kind of eating out of season versus eating in season kind of looks like. So Laura, you kind of want to start off talking about what stress does to the body.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep. Yeah, I think that's a good topic just to kind of introduce, because managing stress is one of the biggest things that competitive athletes should focus on in their recovery. And so I guess just to introduce basically what stress is. Stress is anything that causes your body to release the hormone cortisol. And there's a couple other hormones too, but cortisol is the major player. And by nature, cortisol is catabolic, which just basically means that it causes your body to break down like muscle tissue, glycogen, anything that gives it energy, which is good in the short term. Like you want a cortisol response, but it's very common to see it very elevated in athletes, especially if they're not recovering well. So cortisol, and there's so many different side effects or symptoms of high or like consistently high cortisol. So like poor sleep, muscle fatigue, bloating. I think a lot of people think weight gain is like if they're like not eating enough, exercising a lot, and still they're gaining weight. It's not really what's happening. It's more so that your body is just holding on to a lot of water. And that's kind of a generalization, but that's typically what I've seen in myself and other athletes. And then like you just feel like crap all the time because you're not recovering. You're not letting your cortisol kind of like cycle through and like reduce and then raise and then reduce. It's just kind of like at this constant elevated state. Yeah. So that is basically what stress is. And really anything can cause stress in the body. It's not just like what we think of like work stress or relationship stress or whatever. High intensity workouts cause your body to release cortisol. And CrossFit is high intensity workouts. And that's why it's so important to take rest days, do deload weeks, ensuring that you're mixing like low intensity workouts with high intensity workouts and not just pounding away at your body with high intensity every single day.
Yeah, and to kind of caveat off of that a little bit, also making sure that you have specific days that you are planning on doing your qualifier workouts so that you can let that cortisol level kind of drop back down and recover specifically. So
Yep.
maybe that's like a 2-day break between, a 1-day break between, something like that, but that you're going to bring more intensity to that qualifier workout, or at least you should be. And so that's just going to elevate your cortisol levels that much more, create more stress, create more systemic tension in the body, when you go to do those qualifier workouts. So the more time you can have between, the better.
Yep. Yep. That's a great point. Making sure, because those qualifier workouts are generally very difficult. And like just the like anxiety and like like the excitement that you're feeling around doing these qualifier workouts is demanding way more energy from you and causing even more cortisol stress to your body. So it's that much
Yeah.
more getting an adequate amount of recovery. This is why we see professional CrossFit athletes take a month off after the games, because it's just day in and day out for 5 days of high intensity workouts, really highly demanding exercises, workouts on their body that they need to take that month off just to recover.
Yeah. And not only on top of that, like they've been training super hard for probably up to 8 or 9 months at that point in time. So like you gotta think about, like, for 8 to 9 months, like you were talking about, there's just been like this, maybe a little dip, but probably like more of a rise in their cortisol levels.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think, one thing you talked about earlier was like how there's work stress, relationship stress, and that kind of like is in today's day and age is kind of like the perception of stress now. There's not so much like physical activity stress. And obviously for CrossFitters, there's a little bit more physical activity stress, but that, that relationship work stress and competition stress in general is all fueling your cortisol levels and like your tension levels, your central nervous system. Like, so when you enter into a qualifier, not only do you have like normal stress, now you have competition stress and you're elevating your intensity levels. So like you also have to take into the account that you're competing, and some of these qualifiers are like 4 weeks long. So you're like literally sitting there on a leaderboard for 4 weeks. Like, oh,
Yeah.
if I had gotten 1 rep better, I'd be 50 spots up, like, and I'd be in a qualifying position. So it's like, you also have that kind of like, it's harder for your cortisol levels to come back down now because most people are like sitting on the leaderboard worrying about what other people are doing, like you name it.
Yeah.
And that is also kind of like playing into those stress factors and like eating up energy, consuming our energy, for when we need it to like turn it on inside of a workout.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that is one of the biggest reasons why with my athletes and clients, I check in on their stress regularly, because on what their goals are, like if it's performance or it's like a fat loss phase or a weight gain phase, if their stress is really elevated, they're probably not going to get the results they want as fast, because that constant stress on them is working against what they want.
Yeah.
Typically, if they're in a really high stress time in their life, generally we won't work into like a lot of those goals. Like it's just pain and work on like consistency in their nutrition, but we typically won't go into like a fat loss phase, a weight gain phase, or anything that's going to potentially cause them more stress.
Yeah, yeah, like the body can only adapt to so much. And that's such a hard point to get across to people, is like, hey, if you're sleeping 5 hours a night, that's a stress on your body. Like if if you're working 9 hours a day, that's like go, 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 go. That's a huge stress on your body. Like
Yep.
your adaptation process is going to be diminished because of those things. And
Yeah.
it's a tough thing to, like not only your adaptation process, but you could potentially have like injuries pop up that, wouldn't normally be there if you kind of worked like a chiller job. or
Yeah.
you were sleeping 8 hours a night. So yeah, it's that's a good point to make, is like how much, kind of, I've heard it coined adaptation currency the body has.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's a good point to bring up. So like, kind of to go off of that, like, so you don't, when your athletes have more stress in their life, you don't really do any sort of like cut phase or anything like that with them. It's more just like maintenance phase, or
Yeah. I mean, especially for an athlete,
Mhm,
I, it's a conversation that you really need to like dig into for like, okay,
mhm,
why do you wanna go on a cut? What's the purpose of it? What are you going to get out of it? Because an athlete is constantly doing high intensity workouts. They're
mhm,
constantly a ton from their body, even if it's just like heavy weightlifting, like that's a lot of demand on the body. And you see a lot of athletes doing 2-a-days as well, which is
mhm.
even more demand on the body.
Yeah.
But personally, I don't like putting athletes into a calorie deficit if they're doing that much exercise.
Mhm,
And if they really want to go into a cut phase, it's a conversation of, okay, you're going to have to work out less.
mhm.
You're going to have to demand less from your body, because going into a calorie deficit is only going to make your body like more of a dumpster fire. And it's not to be in if you're like so beat down, so worn out, so fatigued that your performance is crap, you're feeling like crap, your mood is crap. There's kind of this give and take, of, okay, you want to take calories away, then working out less to kind of help manage that stress response has to be considered.
Mhm, mhm. So like, I guess, if that is the case, like somebody's athletic and you kind of have to manage the stress response, maybe we can kind of like get into like cycling macros throughout the year then. So like,
Mm-hmm.
what exact, like, when should somebody look at changing their macros? Like, why is, like, it's not, it's seeming like it's not a smart thing to do inside of like a competition time frame, right? So like, when
Right.
is there a point in time where you do want to decrease somebody's macros, or do you keep them on maintenance throughout the year? Like, what does that process look like?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess it's definitely contextual. So if you have an
Mhm,
athlete that really needs to build their strength and their 1 rep maxes, the best time for them to go in a weight gain phase is probably off season, because the closer they get to competition season, the heavier they're going to be. Like, they're just going to be a heavier body to move around. And if they're
mhm,
not used to that, might not find that there's quick in like body weight movements.
mhm,
So you want to build their weight in the off season so that you can kind of bring their weight a little bit back down, closer to when the open starts or when qualifiers start. Um, that can also be said for if you have an athlete that wants to lean out, and
mhm,
they feel good about the weight that they can lift, but they just want to lean out like a couple pounds.
mhm,
Um, Typically off season is going to be the best time to do that, or like as far away from the open as you can get.
mhm.
Um, don't want them to be massive deficit when they're getting close to a time when they need maximum energy output. So that off season sweet spot is like where you want to find a lot of like cutting macros or gaining mass. And then like maybe a month or two out of qualifying season or the open, which is when season starts, that's when you want to start building them back up to their maintenance. And then from there, all maintenance, like even maybe a little bit more on like the hypercaloric side, like not so much that they're
Mhm.
going to gain a lot of weight, but just in them to like restore their glycogen stores, have like really good energy stores to perform their best during qualifying season.
Yeah. Okay. So like, let's do an example here. Like, I just finished quarterfinals. I'm done for the year now. I'm not competing until the fall time frame. I want to lose like 5 pounds for that fall time frame. What would you have me do like right after quarterfinals? And like, how would you set up like a a system for me to get kind of like that, lose roughly 5 pounds before October.
Mm-hmm. So if this was happening after quarterfinal season, what is that, like
March, I think.
April-ish?
Yeah, March or April.
March. Okay, so after you completed quarterfinals, you would need like a week or two to really recover from the high demand of the qualifying season. And then after you kind of take that break, the first thing I would do is just make sure that you're able to consistently eat at maintenance. And then once you're, kind of in that maintenance phase for 2 to 4 weeks, then we'll slowly get you down to like a calorie deficit, whatever kind of like you're able to work with. Some people can do a 10% calorie deficit. Some people can really push into that 20% calorie deficit and not suffer, but somewhere in between. And then I'd say 16 weeks is typically the maximum that you ever want to be in a calorie deficit. But again, it depends person to person. Some people will find that they can go shorter, like 10 to 12 weeks. And some people can maybe push that out to 20 weeks, but 16 is kind of that average. So after about 12 to 16 weeks, and if you've hit your goal, or gotten close to it, then from there, like, let's say that's, I don't know, mid-July, August-ish. Then from there, we're just building you back up to your maintenance calories, a little bit at a time, so that by October, you're already back to your maintenance and you're already have kind of been there for a little bit, so that it's not like your body is not getting like used to eating more calories. It's like you're there, you have your energy stores back, and you're able to perform like you would expect.
Yeah. So about how far out do you want to like kind of be at your set weight for the competition season?
Personally, I would say anywhere between 4 and 6 weeks.
Okay.
And that's kind of like from personal experimentation. Because I've done a couple cuts, or I've done a couple mass gaining phases before. And I found that it takes, especially out of a cut, it takes my body about 4 weeks to 3 to 4 weeks, I should say, to really feel like, okay, energy's back. I'm not fatigued anymore. I'm back to lifting the weight that I expect. I'm performing the same in my high intensity workouts. So you definitely want a couple weeks before your qualifying workings, if that makes sense.
And do you think that that varies at all per individual? Like, let's say somebody's had like a really kind of like, we'll say interesting relationship with food, or like their macros have looked weird for 5+ years, and like you got them to maintenance for a year, you kind of like got them reset a little bit, but now they want to cut, and like you got them in the cut, but it like maybe you want them like, do you want them a little bit further out at their goal weight so that their body can kind of like take some time to maybe like readjust to that weight, or like readjust to that stress? Does that kind of make sense? Or
I think so. Yeah, that's kind of a good question. There's so many different scenarios that can happen with an athlete. So typically what you do when you're in a cut phase and you build yourself back up to maintenance is you want to do it a little bit at a time. Because if you just change your macros back to maintenance from being in this massive cut, or whatever, a little cut, massive cut, typically you're going to gain more weight than if you did it a little bit at a time. And so having patience, like if you were to gain all the weight quickly back, that kind of makes cut that you just did a little bit like what was the purpose of that? And so that's why you want to slowly add calories back in, so that your body doesn't just put on like the fat that you just lost.
Got it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people understand that as reverse dieting. And typically that's a little better if you want your body to stay at that same weight, and it just kind of helps your metabolism start speeding back up again, adding in like, I don't know, 100 to 200 days a week. And so if I had an athlete like the one that you described, I think I would want to have a little bit more time to build them back up to maintenance.
Okay.
That the key with what you said is if they had like a you know, like a weird relationship with food in the past and their macros had been all over the place, I would assume that it wouldn't be a smooth process reverse dieting them. And so I'd want to take a little bit more time so that they understand why it needs to be you know, they need to be patient. It's a process to get them back up to those maintenance calories. So I think I guess the short answer to your question is I'd want that I have plenty of time to get them back up to calories.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Yeah, I mean, short answer, right? Is how yes. But it's kind of fun, like exploring the why behind things too, you know? But yeah, no, that makes sense. There's just so many, yeah, like kind of one of the fun things about this is like, there's just so many variables that you have to account for. And like, everybody's kind of like a different puzzle. Like everybody's past is different. Everybody's relationship with food is different. Everybody's competition level is different. Goals are different. Like it's kind of fun to just like, you know, talk through some scenarios and just kind of see like, you know, hey, this is this is that, this is this, and just kind of like put some things out there, if that makes sense. Okay, so one thing I did want to touch on that or kind of come back to was you know, that first example, like we're using like me as an athlete as an example, and you talked about that 2-week kind of recovery period after competition. What is that for? Like what is going on there? Like, and you know, we kind of talked about the month off after the games. Like what are we doing in that time period, and what is like why are we doing it?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So that time off period is basically to give your body a break. It's to help you recover from all of the demand that you just put on your body. Going back to cortisol and stress response, it's kind of helping manage that stress response and bring your cortisol levels down to kind of a normal amount. Because after, like we said, a qualifier, super high elevated cortisol. So taking some time off to recover, do really easy workouts, or maybe just walk, do yoga, whatever it is, really helps your body manage that cortisol response. And it's also like really mentally good for an athlete to take some time off.
Yeah.
Because going like day in and day out of highly demanding workouts, the mental fatigue is there. Like there's a lot of mental fatigue in this really strict routine all the time for your goals. Like take 2 weeks off to just not track your food, not worry about what you're eating, get lots of sleep, spend time with your family and friends. Like that's what that 2 weeks is for, or however long. But that's basically just to take a break from your high demand lifestyle.
For sure. Yeah. I always tell people, or I have athletes all the time that like complete a competition and they're like, man, I feel so good. This is awesome. Like I'm ready to get back into training. Like, let's go. And it's Monday. And you're like, dude, you just competed at a 3-day competition. Like your epinephrine levels are still way up here, you know, like, and then they'll like, maybe they like, don't do this please, but they like go and do a class workout on Monday, and then they go and do like they go and work out with their friends on Tuesday, and like maybe they'll take it a little bit easier on Wednesday, and then Friday rolls around and they're like, what the fuck just happened? And now they have bad training for like 2 weeks because instead of just getting that epinephrine dump in the weekend and then like kind of letting the body, epinephrine, cortisol, all that stuff, kind of ride it back out towards that and recover by Friday, they did more. They just kept putting it into their body. And that, you know, I tell people all the time, like, hey, your body might be feeling good. Your tissues might be feeling good. Your joints might be feeling good. But your hormonal levels just went through like a fucking World War III, you know? Like they need to come back down and reset and recover a little bit. Like your pituitary gland is the thing that needs the healing process from that competition that you just did. It's not so much the tissues and the joints and stuff like that. Sometimes it is. It's
Mhm.
more so, the inner workings of your body that kind of need that recovery process.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I think like it takes a couple days too to really feel that excessive cortisol dump, because like you said, after a weekend of competing, like people get so ramped up. They're like excited and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm just so excited to get back into the gym and lift. And then they'll go into the gym and like that cortisol level is still high. So they might
Mhm.
feel they have that energy, but then 2 days later, after it's just still elevated, I mean, it's just like the body tanks. And that's
Yeah.
when feel like that massive fatigue, like they've been hit by a truck.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, like something that I feel like I've really started to understand, um, and I don't think it's really well understood within like the CrossFit community, is that resting and taking like rest days or rest weeks is just as important as training. And I think
Mhm.
people think they need to take a rest day or some time off from high intensity. They're like, oh, I'm going to get behind. Like, you're not. You're actually probably going to get ahead because you're allowing your body to adapt to the changes that you just like trained for. And
Yeah.
so those rest days and taking time off from a competition is actually way better for you in the long run than just like getting back into the gym and doing Fran or whatever Murph or some super crazy high intensity workout. Like you're actually not doing your body a whole lot of favors.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm off.
Yeah. Man, I cannot. So semifinals and regionals is right around like the Murph time frame. And I cannot tell you how many times I've seen people compete at regionals and then go and do Murph. And I'm like, what in the fuck are you doing? Like, I
Yeah,
I get flushing it out, but like not that.
yeah. Not a low intensity workout. That is like a crazy hard workout for your
Yeah.
body.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay, so, like, I guess, um, kinda talk like, we just kinda talked about, like, hey, you need the time off to recover, like, restore your hormones, reset the body. How exactly does food help with that? Like, I've heard that fats are really good for, like, helping your hormonal system. Like, how
Mhm.
exactly does food help you with that kind of recovery and reset process?
Yeah, that's a good question. So at the very like base of that question, like how does food help you recover? Eating enough food is like the very first thing you want to do to recover. So
Mhm.
each macro definitely has an important role in recovery, but like just eating enough is what you need to do to really maximize your recovery.
Mhm.
Um, and so that's like number one. And then from there, I I really like to encourage my athletes to eat plant-based fats. So
Okay.
like those chia seeds, olive oil,
Mhm.
olive, avocado oil, stuff like that. Because they are really, really great fats for your body. And that's not to say
Mhm.
that other fats aren't, but typically like animal products have more saturated fat and plants are unsaturated fat.
Mhm.
Um, and fats are super important for hormone building your hormones.
Mhm.
So things like cortisol and reproductive hormones and all hormones.
Mhm. Yeah.
um, and then fats are also like necessary for your nervous system. So like that,
Could you dive into that a little bit more?
I'll try. I'll try.
Alright.
Um, so your nervous system needs fats for your nerves to communicate to each other.
Okay.
Um, and I don't want to get too much into the science because I don't want to like make anyone fall asleep, but
Yeah.
but like your nerves are surrounded by little like globs of fat. That's a really like generalized way of saying that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're not recovering, it's called myelination. And that myelination kind of like starts to wear away if you're not recovering well enough. So if you're not sleeping well enough, not eating enough, and you're putting so much demand on your nervous system, your nerves don't communicate as well. And so that's where you see a lot of like slower reaction time and poor like skill. Like if you're trying to snatch or clean and like it's that really high technical movement and you don't feel like you're really performing that high technical skill, typically it's your nervous system. Again, generalization, but when you think about how fats kind of go like play their role in that, they're helping the nervous system communicate better.
Got it.
And there's more to that too, like making sure that you're eating enough salt and potassium, because those are two minerals that also help your nerves communicate to each other. And so you want to make sure that as an athlete, you're drinking lots of electrolytes, you're eating salty foods, because that's really important for your nervous system to communicate. So that's kind of like the basis of fat.
Yeah. So what you're
that too, but
yeah. So what you're recommending is for people to be slamming avocados and Gatorade between lifting sessions
for
or
sure.
between lifts.
But just like making sure that your diet has quality plant-based fats in them.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then,
Okay.
yeah. So,
yeah.
Then from there, I mean, carbohydrates are so important for energy. So like building your glycogen stores, just having energy to perform your workouts, your high intensity workouts, protein to build muscle tissue.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so I guess that kind of hits on the recovery process and I guess we've chatted a little bit about kind of like the, build up to the season. So like now we get into kind of September, October timeframe, and like most competitive athletes are starting their qualifiers now. I chatted about how stress levels are going to be elevated during those qualifiers. So like, what are you recommending now for like your macro cycle? Like, how does it change? Like you've been at maintenance for a while. Are you continuing on through maintenance? Are you adjusting anything? Is there more stress levels that you have to account for? Like what's going on?
So during qualifier season, typically what I understand, and I'm not like a professional trainer or anything, so I maybe need your advice on this, but during qualifier season, you're kind of ramping up intensity, right? So if you're ramping up intensity and ramping up how much you're in the gym, your macros are going to need to change with that. And so you're going to want to increase your macros. That will probably come from carbs. Carbohydrates are where you're going to get a lot of your energy from when you're performing any qualifier workout or in general. So as an athlete moves into qualifier season, we're going to bump up carbohydrates. And it just depends on how much extra work they're doing. It can be anywhere from 50 to 150 carbs. And so that's kind of like their new maintenance. And so from there, if they're looking for performance, it's going to kind of be a give and take of like just getting energy from carbs. So like what some people would call low quality carbs, like just something that's really easily digestible, like white rice, white bread, sugar, juice, anything that's going to give them like really quick energy, carb powders during a workout or during training. And then like those days, like rest days or in the meals that are kind of like more further away from their workouts, that's when we want to think about quality. So for an athlete, like this is typically why you don't need to have an athlete have like a 100% like clean or whole diet. They need to have those calorie dense carbs that are going to give them energy. So yeah, typically during qualifier season, it's just getting them to eat enough carbs and enough simple carbs for performing their best.
Yeah. So like those simple carbs, for example, like why are you not wanting to do that year round? Like why are you not wanting to put those in your body year round?
So, because they're not always training for performance.
Yeah.
Training, your where you get your calorie sources from is going to change with the seasons. So off season is a great time to start focusing on quality, because you're probably training, but you're not training to like peak. You're just training kind of like start getting back into training or clean up some technique or start ramping up your intensity. That's a really great time to focus on quality. And so quality meaning like vegetable sources, fiber sources, really high quality protein sources, plant-based fats, things like that. And once you build back into season, then you can kind of interplay some of those more calorie dense carbohydrates that make nutritiously the most quality, but they're going to give you the highest performance.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I've noticed, like just competing in the past, is like it takes time to prepare some of those like more high quality meals. And it is so much easier to get, like when you start to like talk about doing like 2-a-days where it's like 2, maybe 2.5, 3-hour sessions, like you're eating up a lot of your quote unquote cooking time for training time. And so as those sessions extend, like I know in the past, it's been just almost impossible for me to get quality food in because of the amount of time that you have to spend prepping the food. I will caveat that with, I fucking hate cooking. So somebody else might be able to do that a little bit easier, but I've just noticed like convenience factor is a little bit easier for those like more calorie dense foods as well.
Yep. And they are much easier to digest. So when you have an athlete who has like 2 hours between training sessions, you don't want to have them eat like a massive salad with lots of fibrous vegetables and brown rice that takes a while to digest and like really fatty like protein sources. They're not going to be able to train after that. So that's really great reason to incorporate those really easily digestible foods, is so that they can eat quickly, digest quickly, go back to train.
Do those easily digestible foods then have like an effect on your digestive system because they are so easy to digest? Like, do they mess up your gut microbiome at all or anything like that? Or
That's a great question. So from what like what I know about the digestive system and gut, your gut bacteria really like high quality sources of food. So like fruits, vegetables, fibrous stuff, potatoes. Your gut bacteria loves potatoes. It typically will have an effect on your gut for sure. Like your gut bacteria is very sensitive also to stress. And so for an athlete who's not recovering well and is not like eating enough food, etc., they might have digestive issues, like digestive stress. And so that's where that interplay of high quality, nutritious food sources has to be balanced out with those like lower quality, but just high calorie energy sources. So if you're thinking about like an athlete who has a morning training session and then they have to recover and go back for an afternoon session, those meals that are going to be around the training sessions are going to be much more easily digestible, a little bit lower on the nutritional scale. And then the meals that they, eat at the end of the day or further away from their training sessions are going to be the more high quality ones that have fibrous vegetable sources, fibrous carb sources, high quality protein, high quality fats.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of athletes, like, they are really, like, they don't have a lot of time to do a lot of that stuff. Like, their time is very demanded, or the demand of their time is from training. But if you're not focusing on balancing out your nutrition like that, your training is not going to be as high quality as you want. And so, yeah, like, it's kind of one of those circumstances where, okay, if you want to train at a really elite level, or even just like train to be an above average CrossFitter, you have to take time to focus on that. Like, you're otherwise not going to perform. You're just going to beat your body down until you burn out.
Yeah. Yep. Until you literally have exhausted your hormones. The point where they can't do anything for you anymore.
So yeah, I mean, if you want to be a high performing athlete, you have to do the stuff that you need to do to be there.
Right.
Yeah, you can't really have it all. Like, you can't just like go perform and eat like shit every day. You have to have that interplay of high quality nutritional sources, and then your quick energy carbohydrates, quick energy protein, or quick digesting protein, like, yeah, it's a lot to balance, but there's a rhyme and a reason for everything. And if you want to perform at that high level, you just got to do the stuff that is required.
Yeah. I find too, like, once you kind of get into a rhythm and know what works well for your body, it's not as much of a, like, somebody might be listening to this and being like, whoa, there's like all these things that I have to think about, like yada, yada, yada. It's like, once you kind of get into a rhythm and a routine with things, like, it's not as daunting of a task as you might think.
Right. It just kind of slowly becomes habit. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just like when you go from doing an hour of CrossFit a day to trying to start training, it takes a little bit of acclimation period, because you're not going to like an hour to like 5 hours a day of training. Your body's just, you have to slowly ramp yourself up to those session days or multiple hour days. Like, at first, it's going to certainly be hard. You're going to have to put a lot of mental energy into thinking about it, into like planning things, but it does eventually become habit, because you already know, like, okay, I have a big training day tomorrow. I'm going to have to make sure I eat plenty of carbs, yada, yada, yada. Like, it.
Yeah. So kind of two last things I want to touch on here is, like, maybe is recovery between workouts, or like qualifier workouts. So, like, if you have 3 workouts in a weekend that you have to do, or maybe it's like one workout where you're testing, like kind of like the open, where you might test Friday, test Monday, and then follow on is like at a competition, like, what are you eating at a competition? But let's start with like recovery between, and then we'll kind of work into eating at a competition, if that works for you.
Yeah, for sure. So when it's game time, when it's like everything that you've been training for is happening, all you're thinking about is getting your energy, like get your proteins for your muscle tissue there. But from there, it's just managing how much carbs you can get into your body. And so if you're doing, the first one was a qualifier. Is that the example you want?
Yeah.
Qualifier, and you have a qualifier workout on a Friday and then another one on Monday, and then you're probably doing a couple more after that.
Right.
Like, you might have a couple more days in between to kind of like build your carbohydrate stores back up. You can kind of add in some of those quality food sources, but this is a important time to focus on just getting really easy energy sources. So I would say, leading up to that qualifier, you're going to want to bump your carbohydrates up a decent amount, like maybe 50 to 100, depending on who you are. And we're talking like easy carb sources, pasta, bread, rice, juice, cereal, anything like that.
So is this considered carb? Sorry, I didn't mean is this considered carb loading? Like what you're talking about right now? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people understand this as carbo loading, like,
Yeah.
like what marathon do when we were younger. They'd eat like 5,000 grams of carbs the day before a marathon.
Yeah.
But carb loading, actually, you have to do it a couple days in advance. It's not just the day before. You want to take like 4 or 5 days before your competition or your qualifier workouts to really ramp that up. But for a qualifier, if you have those rest days in between and you have those rest days, great time to start adding in fibrous sources of like vegetables, fruits, stuff like that. When you're talking about a weekend long competition where you have a workout in the AM, a workout in like mid-afternoon, and then an evening workout, I mean, you're not thinking about quality sources of nutrition. You're just thinking about like eating whatever is the easiest thing for your body to digest, like easy carb sources, nothing fiber, nothing with fat in it. It's just like, how can you get your carbohydrate sources as easy, or like as much as you can get into your body and as easily digestible as you can get, so that your energy is like back up to as high as it can be.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing that I've found that works pretty well at competitions is like usually you'll have like workout in the morning, maybe another workout, and then a workout in the evening. And typically what I find is like candy between workouts, and then you'll usually have like a big break in the day, right? And that's when you want to get your meal in, like that satiating meal where it's like, hey, here's a little bit more fat, here's some protein, like calm your stomach down, like let it kind of sit in there for a little bit longer, so you're not like going into the last workout having only eaten candy all day, and now your body's like, we're still hungry, and you're like, God, this is going on in my head and I need to focus on my workout, but I'm like sending hunger signals. Like that's kind of like what sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Like, and you still want those sources to be really easily digestible. Like if you have a workout in the morning and then a workout in the evening, that's not the time to go get a steak dinner and like cram your body full of like, because again, you want to think about your digestion. But that's a great point, that if you have that like 5-6 hours in between workouts, that's a great time to get like not just candy or carb powders, like eat a real meal. But if you're someone who has like 3-4 workouts in a day, you're probably gonna want to wait until like the last workout of the day to have a big quality whole food source meal.
Yeah, you might want to try and get some sort of like, fat or protein like this. And this is just like speaking from like experience. Like I really like to have at least some sort of kind of meal of like protein or something that kind of like is more satiating. Man, that I don't know why that word's so hard for me to say. But like something that's going to stop some of those hunger signals from happening, because that's like again, this is like always like it's always like everyone's a little bit different, but like when I get those hunger signals, it's very hard for me to focus on something else other than those kind of hunger signals. And then it kind of like wreaks havoc on my stomach for like if it's like day one and I'm doing that, it's going to be tough for me to recover from that for the rest of the weekend.
Yeah. So maybe it'd be a good idea to kind of run through an example comp. Like I can just speak from experience. I did one back in the early spring, and this was kind of just like an average one where there was a couple workouts a day. So like first competition day, I woke up and had a breakfast that had decent amount of protein, maybe 20 to 30 grams, tons of carbs, like maybe 100 to 150, and then just a tiny bit of fat. And that would have been 2-ish hours before my first workout. And then after that first workout, I think I had Gatorade. Yeah, I drank like full calorie Gatorade. So there was like that sugar right into my body, easily digestible. And then I think I had a protein shake. And then my next workout was 2 or 3 hours after that. So in between that time, I was eating like pretzels. I ate a bagel, I think. And like leading up to that workout, I was really like trying to eat just easy carb sources. And then, you know, did the workout. And then after that, I think there was like maybe a couple more hours. And that's when I had like an easy meal, but like a real food meal. So I can't exactly remember what it was, but I think it was like a sandwich, like bread, some deli meat, maybe like some pretzels on the side. That I knew that I could really easily digest and be ready for a workout in a couple hours.
Yeah.
And then between that, I'm still kind of like munching on easy carbs, drinking Gatorade, and then like 30 minutes before my last workout, stopped eating, but just kind of like let my body digest what I had already eaten. And then did the workout. And then since I was done after that, that's the time to have like a nice big meal. Like again, easily digestible because your body was just under so much demand that you don't want any stomach distress, but great to eat like chicken, beef, pork, whatever it is you like, lots of carb sources, some vegetables in there, and some good quality fats.
Yeah. So would you so you're kind of recommending like during qualifiers and during competitions, like definitely trying to figure out a way to like up your caloric intake, have a little bit more caloric intake throughout the course of a weekend or a qualifier or something like that.
Yeah, that's just, it's during a time when you need to perform at your absolute peak. It's not the time to think about quality as much as it is to think about quantity.
For sure.
So for whatever gives you those energy, quick energy.
Yeah. Sweet. I mean, I think that took us through like a whole year, I guess, of competition. And then I guess recycle and repeat, not exactly, but
day after day here.
Yeah. Do you have any like kind of closing thoughts or other things you kind of wanted to throw out there? Or?
Yeah, I mean, I think like we talked about different scenarios, and it really is contextual to every single person. And I think that's why it's so great to have a coach if you're not super familiar with those nutritional concepts. Is a coach can kind of help you with how your training ebbs and flows, because your nutrition definitely change as the seasons change. And like, yeah, like high demand training season or competition season with lower demand off season.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. It is very difficult to look after yourself and it is much nicer to have somebody kind of like overseeing you and being like, hey, you're not eating enough, or like, hey, you're not training enough, or hey, you do need to back off training. So definitely would recommend getting a coach if possible for that. So and Laura's available if you guys are listening. So so well, thanks for coming on, Laura. It was a blast having you. Things was a pretty good one. So yeah, we'll catch you next time here. How do people get a hold of you again if they do have questions?
They can either email me, laura@blacklistedhq.com, or I mean, they can reach out to me on Instagram. I'm always on there, Laura Wilson 14. Send me a little DM.
Sweet. Yeah. Well, thanks for listening, guys. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like and subscribe. If you're listening on another source, please follow us on Instagram, blacklisted.hq. And if you guys are ever in need of any coaching or need help with anything, just reach out and let us know. And we will catch you guys next time.